Good evening, everybody. Welcome to BCS event, BCS Enterprise Architecture Specialist Group event on the Corner Shop EA, or Corner Shop Enterprise Architect. I'm Ian West. I'll be your host for this evening, with Lorne Mitchell being my co-host. We'll be taking 2 sessions, or taking you through this evening's hour-long event. If you we're also on social media, so if you want to post anything out, the details of social media, our Twitter account there on the screen now. So that's there. In terms of this evening's event, just in terms of etiquette, if you're not speaking, could you please put yourself on mute when not speaking? And also, if you maybe turn the video off, which helps makes no distractions during the queuing. If you'd like to make any comments or ask any questions, we're reserving that bit towards the end, but add any comments into the chat window during the sessions, have any conversation there. And towards the end, we'll have a Q&A part where you'll be able to ask questions to the host and amongst yourselves for the evening. And in terms of the format for this evening, brief introduction, welcome, which I'm going through now. There'll be a brief presentation from myself about the Corner Shop EA, and a presentation from Lorne as well, to cover that and introduce you to the concept. And then once we've been through that, it should take us about 20 minutes, half an hour. Then we'll step into a Q&A session where we'll be looking at 4 main questions around the Corner Shop EA and what it is, and into an interactive Q&A. Essentially, that's what we'll be doing this evening. Anything to add to that, Lorne?
I think that's great. Let's have some fun and a bit of exciting sort of questions and opportunities to sort of debate at the end. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay, so the Corner Shop EA, as I say, my name's Ian West. I'm here to talk to you about that. So the idea behind the Corner Shop EA, and it was something that I was been thinking about recently. And as I wrote there, you know, the Corner Shop EA, it's somebody who's a bit more entrepreneurial. And I say I'm going to do this as a kind of persona to get people thinking. Somebody who's a bit more entrepreneurial, looking at delivering their architecture services or products to a small business or a medium business, or basically something different around that. And pitching it really as a little bit of a different model to our kind of traditional enterprise architect, where we generally see them as being part of a large enterprise or delivering their services into a large enterprise. Now, the logic behind this, or the thinking behind this, is actually the skills that we as enterprise architects have developed and provide is not just applicable to enterprises. Certainly with the growth in digital products and technology, the world is becoming more and more complex, and our skills are required or needed by a whole variety of different organizations, enterprises effectively. And so the Corner Shop EA is someone who actually is looking more about different places they can apply those skills. So why would you want to be a Corner Shop EA? Who is this Corner Shop EA? What's their motivation? Well, motivation, certainly thinking about it, is maybe you want to become more of a kind of independent practice. So again, this is breaking away from that kind of enterprise model. And so, you know, as a practicing architect, yeah, you may want to set up your own practice independently. You might want to perhaps consider serving businesses directly, where often in a large organization, you're maybe located within maybe strategy division or within technology, but you're kind of positioned already in an organization, and so your scope is almost like immediately or early defined. And so the Corner Shop EA has a bit of flexibility in how they apply themselves and potentially serve businesses. And actually that then opens up the possibility that as that kind of EA, you might want to focus on particular markets as well, to become even more of a specialist in that space. And if I take, myself as an example, I've done a lot of work around the construction industry. And so, maybe I want to deliver my services more focused on construction industry as an independent architect. And it also opens up the chance to think about maybe delivering kind of maybe small discrete packages of work as opposed to larger pieces of work. And they're kind of all motivations around the corner shop EA and why you might want to kind of entertain this practice. I think the other thing as well is that the way the world is changing. Some of this, you can look at this from a kind of difficult market conditions. COVID's had a big impact. There's always pressure on contractors in terms of things like IR35 and other regulations around the world. So again, this is potentially another way of continuing to be kind of that independent architect, but in a model which is a little bit different than previously. So they're kind of motivations that corner shop EA has. And so what are the benefits that brings, not just to that person or team, but to maybe the broader market? So from a benefit point of view, you might look at this as a way of giving yourself professional freedom and working differently. And that's the hence why the corner shop is somebody who's kind of a little bit more independent and can be a bit more, hopefully a bit more kind of flexible around their destiny. But actually from a business perspective, and this really begins to kind of play into that corner shop mentality. If you think about why you would use a corner shop, well, I go to my corner shop because actually it's quite accessible. I only need to walk to the end of the road and I can get what I need. And so part of the benefit here is you can have a practice which is more accessible to businesses. So, you're reducing that barrier to accessing the skills. Convenience is another area that you can build into the corner shop model. Again, thinking about the shop, it's not, you often call corner shops convenience stores. So again, it's a convenient way of being able to access services and products from an EA. And what that also means is that there might be more flexibility around the price. And that's something that we could talk about a little bit later as well. I'd like to explore a little bit later is actually, does this change in model change the way we think about how architecture services are priced and costed and delivered? So there are kind of some of the benefits that the corner shop EA brings. And when you think about how you apply those to the clients that practice might do, immediately I would think of small businesses. And when I talk about a small business, it's somebody could be less than maybe 500, 100 employees. They don't have direct access to EA or any architecture kind of resources generally. And whilst they still demand it, they're not going to employ a full-time EA. So it makes it quite convenient for those types of businesses. Another potential client could be startups. There's regularly startups are forming. They want help and guidance around, could be formulating ideas, plans, even thinking about what markets they could tackle and join into. So again, another potential client of the corner shop EA is that kind of startup activity. And then actually the other clients are potentially moving back into kind of the traditional where we might see EAs. So, being that kind of flexible resource, you might be able to step more into kind of medium-sized businesses who might have maybe a small EA team and want some kind of supplemental services, or actually you might engage directly with businesses. So actually almost bypassing that kind of technology team to provide services directly to divisional leaders, directors, etc. and potentially even into those kind of large enterprises, which nowadays are a lot more, or certainly some are a lot more flexible and looking more for actually how they can move rapidly. There, I see some potential there, but I really see the kind of corner shop EA's target market as being those kind of small businesses, startups, and potentially into that kind of medium space, but it doesn't preclude moving into those larger areas. And the types of services that need to be delivered, it's those kind of traditional EA services that you would consider doing. Things, around strategic planning, being able to help businesses take ideas and develop them, design them to a point where they can move forward with them. You then might provide kind of some design type services, which would take those ideas, maybe engage with development communities, with other technology teams, business teams, to deliver those kind of design services, or possibly kind of that independent assurance type services. I'm sure we've all been working on those projects where actually we'd love that somebody external to come in, give us a bit of guidance and assessment around that. And so assurance. So I kind of see the corner shop EA as having a kind of set of almost like products on the shelf, which those small businesses, those startups can come along and say, actually, can I have, I was going to use it like a corner shop experience, can I have a tin of strategy, please, or can I have a packet of assurance? But essentially, it's giving those particular companies access directly to those EA services. So if I'm kind of summing up the corner shop EA, it's really a small independent practice or individual who's able to deliver those services to kind of small, medium businesses, startups in a nice packaged way, which is, as is, with any corner shop, it's accessible, it's readily available, it's convenient, and actually it's priced at the right point for the purpose that they have. So that for me is the corner shop EA, and I say we have a Q&A or a discussion section a little bit later where we're going to get into a little bit more about people's thoughts and ideas about what that kind of practice might do or may look like. At which point I shall now hand on to Lorne to talk about his next bit, the serving the small bits. So Lorne, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So for those who don't know me, I'm Lorne Mitchell. I co-chair the Enterprise Architecture Specialist Group with Daljit Banger, and we've been doing that as a duo for about the last 6 and 7 years. This topic particularly interests me because I suppose I kind of run a kind of corner shop. I'm not sure if I call it EA, but I'll come to that. And I just thought I'd give you a few sort of my thoughts on it. As an experience. I tend to work mostly in the telecoms, IT, media sectors, but more recently I've started working in the charity sector. And I think the thing about SMEs is that they're many and various. They as Ian says, they can be startups right through to pretty big organizations. So trying to generalize is really difficult here. So what I thought I'd do is try and talk more about some of the challenges that I've seen, and we can debate some of that later. And obviously the world is changing fast with the rise of SaaS and other types of infrastructure, so that the needs of an SME to employ a large heavyweight sort of IT group is really no longer there. And you can get very, very lightweight IT specialisms within SMEs because they basically use SaaS-based services. So as that's happened, the sort of I think that the role of an EA has shifted. So could we have the first slide? I tried to do some research on this. It's about a year old, and I'm not sure of the source, but I thought this was quite interesting in terms of the types of information requirements for decision making in an SME. I put the reference at the bottom there, and you'll see the top two are basically almost 50%. Are business opportunities and competitors, market data, and finance. And interestingly enough, the rest of the stuff, falls down below, and could be argued that, it doesn't really matter once you get to 7th, 8th, 9th position, really what the order is at all. But I think those are the two main uses of information within a company to sort of fuel it. And interestingly enough, that finance has been the sort of traditional guardian of data. And obviously needs the sort of single view of the truth. And certainly a case study I'm going to present this evening, I'm working at a charity at the moment. The finance director is keen to get the financial accounts out, doesn't really understand too much about management accounting. And therefore data tends to stay in silos of each organization, each part of the organization. And I think that's one of the main challenges sort of with an EA mindset is coming across the organization where the data is still very much kept in those silos. So can we get the next slide, please, Ian? Yeah, so this is a sort of schematic really showing that the siloed data and I've also seen examples of sort of rumors and hearsay, sort of I hear that we've had another 3 customers join us this week, or I hear that the number of complaints has gone up through the roof in the last month. And often because there's no data sort of or information kind of integration sort of function, it becomes an argument between the various silos as to what data is relevant, how up to date it is, how accurate it is, and everything else. So this is a sort of low level of maturity that you find. And I do find the capability maturity model quite a useful one to bring to clients when we're looking at that. And I have a whole, I'm not going to go into it today, but I have a whole sort of set of questions I go through asking by function how sort of mature their data is, how good it is, how clean it is. And I think that can be a very useful way to help both big and small companies, but particularly SMEs who perhaps aren't as literate in some of this stuff. But ultimately, the information is needed to make decisions. Some decisions can obviously stay within functions, like the number of orders you've got or something like that. But when what I find is when you have a piece of information that needs to move across functional boundaries, that's when the breakdowns start. And those are the kinds of data sets that you need to sort of focus on and start asking questions around if you're going to intervene. And as an EA, you become a kind of integrator, information integrator, systems integrator, ideas integrator often. And I find that if the company isn't mature enough to allow for that integration, often with small companies, they have what I call founders syndrome, where the founder's still in charge and all the integrations in their mind, yeah? And they've got this very, very clever way of just cutting data lots of different ways and knowing the answer, and they're normally right. And a challenge of getting out of the founders sort of syndrome into a more functionally based organization can often be really difficult. And as I said, I've got a client at the moment like that. The founder's there and is very, very bright, knows the market really well, but confounds everybody in their silos for being too sort of command and control. And we're then down to culture and organizational culture, and you can't avoid culture when you're discussing things like this. We won't talk about that now, but I just put that as an aside as to the culture and the maturity of the organization obviously go hand in hand. So can we get the next slide, please, Ian? Yeah. So the next challenge, of course, is that there's lots of different types of data coming into the company. And if it's siloed, you get marketing data owned by the marketing department, not really sharing it around, not really realizing that the marketing data is useful in other parts of the organization. And one of the things as an EA or corner shop EA is to help set up the cycles within the business where people get together on a reasonably regular basis, once a month, once a quarter, to actually look at other people's data, literally, and see what's going on. And I've just instigated that in this charity I'm working at the moment. And it's actually been quite successful because suddenly people realize that the information they've got is useful in other parts of the business. It might not be accurate enough, or it might not be clean enough. It might not even be there, but they start to realize how interdependent they are on different parts of the organization, and how it's really important that the information isn't seen as a sort of siloed information. I've put external data there as well. I think that's becoming even more important nowadays, particularly with the rise of SaaS-based applications. Something like Salesforce, comes pre-canned with abilities to access external data, and obviously you have to pay more. And the challenge is there, of course, is that if you get a function using SaaS-based stuff without a proper budgeting system, and even if it's an IT department with Amazon or something, your costs can go up through the roof. And the CFO will come along and find that there's an enormous invoice at the end of the month for something that perhaps somebody didn't really realize that it was going to cost so much money. So there are significant control issues when you're using external data, where people are trying to push more and more value at the organization, and finding that actually that value becomes a massive cost that you've got to pay for that quarter. So that's another challenge with the external data. So we've moved to the next slide, Ian, please. I suppose this slide, which is coming slowly. There we are.
I was getting there.
Is the art of creating dashboards and KPI dashboards, which I find might not be seen as an EA type function within any larger business, because they're often sort of people. But I think the opportunities to help small businesses start to integrate the ideas they've got and actually define the key performance indicators that they need to look at on a regular basis. I mentioned this sort of regular review, and that they look across the business, because you find that each part of the business, if it can be shown how dependent it is on another part of the business, is much more likely to share that data and realize how their data, or in fact the operations that they have, is going to impact on another part of the organization. And invariably, any bad quality ends up on the bill, either as a sort of as a service level agreement, sort of a payment back for screwing things up, service credit, yeah, or a sort of complaint that's not going to actually mean that the bill gets paid at all, or it gets paid late. So I often find that finance is a really useful place to start. And as icing on the cake, I'm going to show you what I call my part of my system, which is called KPIs in color. So the next slide for that integrated dashboard. I go in and I color, and I've put a piano keyboard here because I love music as well. I have different colors for different parts of the organization. So product is the product itself. I find analysis at a product level is not just for fast-moving consumer goods, but at any organization is useful. Some products are going to be newer than others. Some of them are going to be bearing more revenue. But if you can take a product manager's hat as an EA, you're not going to go too far wrong. And then obviously the product leads to lead generation. So how are you getting leads for that product through to sales, and how many orders are you getting? And if you've got a bad product that's being badly marketed, you're not going to get many sales. I mean, it sounds bloody obvious, but obviously in businesses, if they can see some of these flows, they're going to get less siloed. You find particularly in development organizations and IT organizations where their money's funny money and they're not actually having to get any orders against it, that you get some sort of contorted thinking sometimes. So I'm talking about a straightforward company here where you actually need to sort of make a profit, or at least be on the path to make a profit. And then the next sort of three are service delivery. So that's installing the product, delivering it, shipping it, whatever it is. What are the delivery indicators around that? And what are your sort of KPIs around that function? And then customer feedback, either in terms of faults or in terms of questions they have, or in terms of repairs they might want. And that yellow bar, that yellow CDE, it is on the piano, is absolutely key to also a key entry point. But the best entry point of all is orange, which is billing, revenue, and profit, the key financial indicators. You can start there and work out from it. And in certain dire consequences, the bottom indicator, which are the risks, challenges, and waste. Waste is another good one to go for. And that can be in a service company as well as a product company, and looking at wasted resources, wasted work. So that's my kind of piano keyboard key performance indicators in color, which I use. And I map that onto an organization when I go in and run workshops against it. And so people suddenly realize that if their product launches 3 months late, they're not going to get the sales in to get the profit in that they need. So they're going to suddenly realize how dependent they are on the whole machine, if you like. And if a company goes into red, literally at the bottom, and the risks in terms of perhaps compliance or something like that goes out the window, then everything falls to bits. So that's why the risk aspect is fundamental to, if you like, taking an overview of the business and looking at where the challenges are and where to put the heat. With any small businesses, there's far too many things to do. You probably find that if you run your own consulting business. So you've got to focus, and I find this sort of model is very useful. So that's the end of my bit. Hope you find that useful. Please do type questions if you've got them into the chat if you can. If you can't, then well, we need to press some button I haven't worked out yet. But I hope you can give us some questions, and we'll go on to Q&A, which Ian's going to run.
Okay, thanks for that, Lorne. A couple of interesting things I picked up there, and I say one of the things that you mentioned there is that the corner shop EA needing to have a bit more of a broader skill set. I think where you said they might need more knowledge around, say, KPIs, and I think that's perhaps an important thing to think about, is if you are going to be this slightly more independent person and advising smaller organisations, you may well be asked to do more kind of design work, which perhaps sometimes isn't perceived as being the realm of an enterprise architect, certainly within a large enterprise. And something definitely to think about there. Yeah, I know you kind of touched on the, yep.
It's true. In fact, I find also that the name EA doesn't really fit with SMEs. I find enterprise design or business architecture, using those words in a creative way often means more to if you're going in at the top to the management team. Enterprise architecture doesn't quite work for them, but something with design or something with business can work. So yeah, making sure that you're defining what you do and describing what you do in a more relevant sense is absolutely important, because otherwise you just don't get a look in.
Definitely. So in terms of this part of the hour which we've got, what we wanted to do is just open the floor up a bit more to people, either through the chat window if you've got a question there, or please raise your hand if you want to ask the question more directly, or share your thoughts around this in terms of an interactive Q&A. To get the kind of ball rolling, I've put some questions up there to kind of help make people think about what maybe this is. So I'll just go through those and then we'll open it up to the floor. So the first one really is, the corner shop EA acting as this independent architect. What sort of services and products would they offer to those businesses? Because you've got to be able to explain it to a small business. What they're expecting something a bit more deliverable. They're expecting perhaps something a little bit more tangible. So, going in and maybe saying, oh, I'm going to, define your target state architecture, perhaps isn't as meaningful to them, where you may say, look, what's your business problem? I'll help you formulate a strategic plan for it, something like that. But yeah, what kind of services and products would they offer? What kind of practice structure as well would be needed for success? So, is this, you know, a single person who just happens to have the right skill set to support these small businesses? Or are we actually really talking about more of a team structure here, or a practice which is specialized around those smaller businesses? So, you know, does this team need to have some other skills in there, maybe kind of things like business analysis or project administration? What is it that the practice needs, or that EA needs, to be successful? And that could also include things like being able to connect to other organizations, other small businesses. So, for example, development houses, startups, etc. The third point was really around how do you price this, because moving away from being an EA within a large enterprise, or being maybe a contractor, means that suddenly you're having to actually charge for your services, perhaps on a time and materials basis, perhaps as a kind of fixed price kind of thing. So what sort of pricing model would make sense for the corner shop EA? And finally, actually a bit of an open question is, has anybody else kind of seen this approach elsewhere? Having spent time in the construction and architecture industry, I often refer back to maybe building architects as being a reference point, in the sense of, actually that's generally, you still find independent architecture practices. Say you're going to build an extension to your house or something like that, where you can engage with. Maybe that's a model to consider how this works into the future. So there was just some questions to get people's thoughts, brains engaged and thinking. So off the back of that, Lorne, have we had anything?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions here. So the first one is from Dom. Thank you for having set up this webinar. Thank you. Just a question, please. Do SMEs and startups care about TOGAF, etc., or not?
So from my experience, I've spoken to some SMEs and startups, and they don't even know what TOGAF is. You know, what they're looking for is somebody to provide that service to them. If you're coming along with a credential like TOGAF, that might carry some more weight with you. But I think the reality is, I wouldn't say they don't care, they just don't know what it means as a qualification. Lorne, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's a lot of good stuff in TOGAF, and I think if you can market yourself to reinterpret that, which is what I've done, then you're more likely to be successful than talking about how qualified you are in TOGAF. I completely agree with you, Ian. I think that's one of the challenges with the EA industry is we have this whole sort of set of words and phrases and qualifications which have some great tools, great techniques, great ways of looking at things, but you need to sort of reinterpret that almost for the audience, sometimes on the hoof. And I'd agree with you that no, most people. The question was, are they likely? Do they care? And I don't think they. No, do they care? No, I don't think they do care, because they don't know. I'd agree with you.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing about the corner shop EA is, if you are in that role, you're going to sell. You need to sell yourself more on what you have delivered in the past, as opposed to what your qualification is. You know, people are going to sort of say, oh, you know, what other businesses have you helped to succeed? What else have you given them? So for me, it's actually quite a interesting way to think about it, because you're suddenly very delivery focused in terms of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, where you've used TOGAF, there's a story. And if you've got good results, then tell the company about the results and the story, and forget the TOGAF bit. Yeah. And yeah. So we got another question here from Chris. Chris NS. Thank you. Do you see a difference in corner shop EA approach between the small clients that are long established at their current sizes versus small clients that are startups and likely, in brackets, planned to grow at speed? I don't know if you've got any insights on that, Ian.
I was waiting for you to answer, Lorne.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to go for that. Yeah, I think that's definitely, there is a difference. I find, you know, for instance, this charity I'm working with at the moment has been going for 10 years. And they went through invariably 1 or 2 crises in funding at years sort of 3, 5, and 7. And it's interesting. They have a kind of caution. In my KPIs in color, it's the red bar. The red bar, it can be very useful in terms of the red zone to protect yourself from risks, but also companies can become quite risk averse if they haven't, if they've gone through these sort of early stage traumas almost. And it's kind of semi-traumatized organization, so that the 3 people at the top are very reluctant to move and to innovate and to create new stuff because they've been through this trauma, as opposed to a startup who's, I've got another client who's so gung-ho and so, if you like, naive. You just worry that they're really going to survive. So I think it's a bit like sort of children growing up. You know, companies go through the same growth pangs, and depending on whether you're dealing with a 5-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 25-year-old or more, yeah. Obviously, in companies, maybe it's like dog's life. You know, it's a bit sort of the years don't count like human years. But certainly the maturity of the company, which I mentioned at the beginning, is a key thing to latch onto when you start to engage with these types of clients, and make your own assessment then as to what's appropriate. Because there's no point in offering a 5-year-old something that a 25-year-old might be wanting. You've got to sort of take, you know, work with them on the path that they're on, so that almost you go through some of those learning experiences and try and make them less traumatic than they need to be. Particularly so things like information security and being hacked and all that sort of stuff. So we could go on talking on that for ages, but I don't know if you've got any insights, Ian, on that.
Yeah, I'd agree that, yeah, you need to treat them differently. I think certainly where I've had conversations with startups, they're much more looking for a bit of advice. They're not necessarily wanting a kind of somebody to spend days or weeks with them planning, but they really want to know where the pitfalls are. So, you know, things like security, if they're actually engaging with larger organizations, what they need to think about. But yeah, they're looking for that, you know, quick bit of advice, guidance, get them moving quickly to the next stage of the thing, where, you know, the small, medium enterprises, small, medium businesses, potentially they could be established for a long time. And so therefore they will be looking maybe more for kind of strategic planning, or how do they suddenly pivot from being a, you know, a physical thing. I know somebody who had a fencing business, and in COVID time, his, you know, digital orders have suddenly exploded, and it's like, well, how does he manage to do that? And really, that's where an architect can be really beneficial and helpful in terms of understanding how to structure it in a way that not only going to see them through this phase, but potentially into the future. So yeah, absolutely, there is definitely a difference between the two. And I think also when you engage with them, think about perhaps what they are willing to give up as well in terms of engaging with you, where, you know, small, medium enterprise might be more want to give you a bit of money or small engagement. The startup might just be looking for the advice, but maybe have some interest in, well, actually, if they are successful, what you might benefit from a longer term relationship with them. So I think you also, not just how you engage with them, but also what potentially you might, how you work with that particular organization.
Yeah, I think I've had a recent experience. I run an oil syndicate down in Kent for heating oil, and over the very cold period, we had a whole load of problems getting heating oil out to people. And I found just basic skills like spreadsheet manipulation, sorting spreadsheets. An amazing number of people don't have those skills. So you're often actually de-skilling yourself, but also adding a lot of value. So if you can help to prioritize things, see how the data supports sensible decision making in a very simple way. You'll often be quite surprised that that can add a lot more value, and how manual a lot of these things are, particularly between systems. Which brings us on to the next question from Abel. Wouldn't corner shop EA have to come up with a more detailed knowledge of, say, CRM or financial packages than an enterprise context, or than in an enterprise context? I think that's true. I think knowing CRMs and financial applications that are used within an SME is useful, although they're not nearly as complicated as SAP. I mean, a lot of SMEs use, for instance, Xero for their accounts and Salesforce for their CRM. You know, there's a sort of standard set of packages, or some derivative. You know, they might use another accounting package or another sort of CRM. But you know, roughly speaking, you're not talking of the complexity there of a massive, you know, multi-country, multi-tenanted, multi-application SAP installation. And in that respect, things are much simpler. Do you need a detailed knowledge of them? No, not really. What you do need to do, though, is know how to take data in and out of them, and how to get good data and clean up data. I think in this role of the integrator, which I said earlier on. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, Ian.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't necessarily say you need more detailed knowledge in the sense of the mechanics of how, you know, like a CRM works in detail. So, you know, you're not suddenly need to become a Salesforce expert. But I think for me, one thing that companies will be expecting, certainly smaller ones, is that you have recommendations for them. So you know, if you're going in there and they're, you know, maybe they've got a particular challenge they're overcoming, they're going to be looking for somebody to say, well, actually, I've done this elsewhere, and maybe this type of CRM, or, you know, Lorne, you mentioned kind of like Xero there, or these financial packages would work for you. So I would expect a bit more of that kind of product knowledge, perhaps, around that thing. I think one thing which also fits in this space is actually the solutions that you would put into an enterprise, large enterprise, will be different to the ones you put into small companies. So you can't turn up somewhere and say, oh, you need an ERP. Oh, by the way, SAP, Oracle, they're the best in the market. You need to go and get those. A small business, that is probably actually quite inappropriate for a small business. And so having that knowledge about maybe the tier 2, the tier 3 CRMs, ERPs, other types of systems like that will actually probably be more beneficial to you than having knowledge around the larger ones. So I suppose coming back to your original question is I wouldn't say you need more knowledge about how they work, but I think you probably need a bit more knowledge about broader what's on the market, what are their capabilities, and where they best work for small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next one is from Tom. Do corner shop EAs need to be capable of project management?
Oh, that's an interesting one, isn't it? It's a tricky one. I'm gonna sit on the fence on this one, to be honest, because taking my earlier analogy around kind of a building architecture practice, they will often offer you project management skills. If they've developed a solution, they will help you deliver it. So I would lean more towards saying they may, yes, I think they do need some understanding of project management skills. Now, coming to one of the questions here is, what shape does the practice need to be? Maybe you actually have a good relationship with a project manager who would happily come in and do that piece of work for you. So think about perhaps how you would source that. But I would say, yes, project management skills are probably to a certain level useful to the corner shop EA. And I think also small businesses are going to expect a bit more than a solution on a page. They're probably going to want some kind of plan around, you know, what do I need to do to build this? How long does it take? Who do I need to engage with? So you're going to be building some kind of design schedule almost as well to go along with that. I mean, what's your experience, Lorne, from
Yeah, I think it's vital, project management skills, because you're invariably managing the project of your engagement, right? And that might involve, lots of moving parts, including the client's expectations. Maybe you've got subcontractors on the project, and even if you have a nominated project manager, you've still got to make sure that your work is done to some sort of project and time scale. Otherwise, you're going to not miss you're going to go bust or not hit the project. And so invariably, I find if you're selling some of your own work as well, it forces you to create a project with the client and make sure expectations are met. And I think one of the things about going smaller is you need more skills, more basic business skills than perhaps you would if you're tucked in some large corporate with a sort of EA department that's running ARIS. So I think that's one of the differences. Yeah. So one from Mike Broomhead. How important is it to align with digital/lean/agile approaches such as minimum viable product and subsequent iterations of products?
A whole nother conversation, isn't it? I'm just wondering. It's an interesting one. I mean, personally, and actually I've been reading quite a lot about this recently, is actually the design, if you think about design as a activity, placing that with a kind of lean, agile constrains it in a way, and it doesn't always gel perfectly. And I've heard about the term kind of long design and short design. I think it will need to align, because actually coming back to some of the things that I've said there is, the corner shop EA needs to be a bit more available, needs to be a bit more accessible, which is kind of that. But I think I wouldn't basically say you need to change the practice to be a lean practice or an agile practice. I think you've probably just got to be a bit more aware of the impact of those into kind of design prep and selection process, particularly if you're working with startups, because they'll all be trying to run lean, agile, Scrum, etc. Lorne, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, if you just go back to the previous slide, Ian, on my KPIs in color thing, I find this approach works really well. I had a client who was supposedly lean and agile, and they had a product development group in purple, which sat in glorious isolation, developing something that took 18 months, and they just couldn't get it out of the stalls. And in the end, the chief developer went on holiday for a couple of months. He wasn't on holiday. He went on sick leave. He dived into a swimming pool that had no water in it and did his neck in rather badly. He's still alive, thank God. And during that time, the chief operations officer started to sort of look under the covers of the product and realized that it was sort of in a spin. And so, they were responsible for green and yellow, the service delivery and the customer feedback. And so they had to go in and sort of revamp it a bit and in order to get it out to market. And once you got some of the other colors engaged with the product development, and it wasn't just stuck in the agile shop, because agile can mean lots of different things to lots of different people, and often it's used by IT people to sort of make sure they give them the next load of requirements, so they can build more features into the product. That's not minimum viable product. They weren't into that at all. So I think the minimum viable product's a really useful idea, so long as you get the functions in the organization in respect of these colors actually lined up behind that product. Because if you launch a product into an organization that's not expecting it, there's no marketing material, the salesmen haven't been briefed, the service delivery team can't hack it because they're doing something else, customers are giving bad feedback because nobody in the organization knows what it is, and the bills are all wrong anyway because the product code's wrong, then the risk of that project's very high. And I find that if you can test each function as it relates to a new product, as I said, a EA corner shop is as much about good product management skills as anything. Yeah, then you're more likely to be successful, and you're back to people. And if the people aren't working together and they don't see the need to launch the product, however hard you try, it's going to stay in purple and just sort of get stuck. So that was my experience on that particular client. Yeah. Right. So we're doing well. Thank you for the questions. They're really good. What size scale of an EA engagement are dedicated skills of management, accountancy, product manager required to augment the EA in the small business area? At what size or scale of EA engagement are dedicated skills of management, accountancy, and product manager? I think I go back to my earlier point. You need to become a bit more of a multi-talented, multi-skilled person, understand the skills of management, accountancy, and how data across an organization becomes so much more useful once it's taken out of its silos, and manage projects such that that integration can take place. But ultimately, you're only going to unlock, for instance, the financial information or the marketing information from those departments if you get on with people. And I think one of the key skills here is getting on with people and showing the reasons why they shouldn't be protective of their information, which is key. Yeah, and sometimes difficult to do if the culture's wrong. So that's my experience. I don't know if you want to say anything here.
Can you read the question back again,
Yeah,
Lord?
sure. I'll try again. So at what size or scale of an EA engagement are dedicated skills of management, accountancy, or project management, etc., required to augment the EA in the small business area?
Okay.
I don't really answer the question, but
yeah, it's a quite a hard one to answer, isn't it? Without being first engaged on something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looking at it, I think what you've probably got to be is if you know if you want to be the corner shop EA, is make sure you've got your network there as well, so that if you get a gig and you're working and you suddenly realize that you maybe need some kind of some PM skills or some development skills, that you've got a network there that you can call out to draw those skills into. I think it's very hard to say when that's going to happen, because I think certainly I've worked on some quite large projects which I've been able to kind of successfully manage on my own, where I've worked on other scale projects where I've had to have a whole team behind me. So apologies, it's a bit of a vague answer to the question from myself.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of cases that I find EA skills come in really helpful, and that's in mergers and acquisitions. So if a company is merging with another company and they've both got different CRMs, they've both got different financial systems, they've both got different cultures, then coming in and looking at it from an information point of view, can be really valuable. And in those cases, some of the bigger consultancies will obviously get engaged. I think there's a thing a bit further on about the bigger consultancies. That's true. But if you know the industry and you know characters within the industry, and you've got a case, you've got a track record in it, you can become a very valuable asset to get that merger or that separation. I've got a client or a potential client, I haven't engaged with them yet, who's separating out a sort of internal tech startup which they bought about 8 years ago, and they've never really been able to absorb it, and it's now more valuable to sell than to keep. And of course, over that time, they've integrated a lot of their systems and financial systems and customer systems and everything else. So in those cases, you become more valuable. And if you're part of a team and you can, as Ian says, if you can sort of cobble together a kind of consortium, if you like, of other skills to go in and help with that, you can add a lot more value than just being a freelance contractor. IR35 or whatever it is becoming a real pain in the butt for people who are freelancers at the moment, and I'm not sure where the market's going to go for those types of skills that people have normally gone to in their third or fourth career. But that's another question, really. We've got some time for one or two more questions. Let me see. Galal says, I think even the corner shop setup needs some measure of teariness. What's that, crying, Galal, or something like that? I'm not sure. I don't get teariness. which is why a large consultancy might feel safer indeed, yes. Even a small team of 2 would give some reassurance of backup and continuity. Yeah, I mean, you're finding now that with the IR35 in the UK now, you've really got to be a part, be part of something a bit bigger than just the freelancing, because otherwise you're just sort of drumming yourself out of the market. So that's a good point. And again, that requires your own skills to team with other people, people skills, and be creative around the types of challenges you go for and where you can really add value. And so that's all really part of marketing, I suppose. We had an earlier one from Abel, who's already asked a good question. Previous examples or testimonial on previous SME deliveries can create a barrier to entry into corner shop practice. No. Well, I don't know. I don't quite understand the question, but obviously if you're into marketing your own services, then testimonials of previous deliveries are good. Yeah, you need to have them up your sleeve, because otherwise you're not going to sound as convincing when you're selling yourself.
Yeah. I was going to say another important thing around that is trying to build a portfolio of work.
Yeah.
So we often sell ourselves on, our skills, and say, oh, we designed this, or we've got this qualification, or we've got that. We're actually, if you're the corner shop EA, you're selling. You should sell yourself on the portfolio of work that you've previously done. People are going to be much more interested if you've, taken the M&A example. You can say, well, actually, I was working with this company, helped them through their M&A transition, or I helped this startup launch this product. It's that kind of mindset you need to have around how you sell yourself.
Yeah, and it's interesting on channels to market as a small practitioner. Accountancy firms can actually bring you business. Often, as I said earlier, the accountants and the management account. The financial firms have access to the equivalent of the CFOs. They've got the problems with the data. So actually selling through an accountancy firm can work, or even partnering with one. And legal and fundraising firms, firms that want to do due diligence on a company, these skills are all very, very useful, and again can be brought to bear if you've got the technical skills, and back to sort of the mergers and sell-offs. And others, I've heard of people who are doing offering services through banks. So banks are offering a loan and they want to provide some sort of management consulting support and that sort of thing. So there are different avenues and different ways that you can get leads to set up a practice like this.
I'm conscious to come up to the top of the hour, or the bottom of the hour rather, Lorne. How many more questions have we got?
We're pretty much there, really. I think, I think we've answered most of the questions. So as it's 29 minutes past, probably a good idea, Ian. Yes, let's wrap up.
Okay. So I think just from my perspective, I wanted to kind of talk about the idea of the corner shop EA as something a little bit different to how we perhaps perceive enterprise architecture as a role. Hopefully it's kind of opened people's ideas or thoughts around actually how they might be able to operate differently, how they may want to work differently in the future. Or even actually, if you're not an enterprise architect, maybe you're a business leader somewhere, or you're working within another organization, you might think, well, actually, that sounds great. I can get hold of EA skills, potentially get hold of EA skills without having to hire a contractor or without having to go to an agency. So again, it may open up other possibilities, but yeah, I wanted to kind of, I'd say, for this session, share the idea. And I think the number of questions we've had around this has clearly sparked a lot of thought within people. So I appreciate your time this evening and the questions. Lorne, what would you like to add to the end of the evening?
No, I think that's a great wrap up, Ian. I've got nothing more to say. Well done. Thank you. Great idea. Great subject.
So thanks for your time. Usual thing, we give a little plug to the BCS EASG group. So We're part of the BCS. We meet regularly, and we're here to promote and, you know, drive change within the industry and improve and mature the EA as a profession. If you're interested in knowing more, here's some details on the screen, or contact Lorne or Dal or myself or other members of the EASG for more details. But thanks for attending.
Great. You can all. I've asked you all to unmute so you can applaud or raise your glass.
That's where the edit ends, isn't it? Well, you hope.
Thank you.
Well done, guys. That was interesting.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Is Dal here?
I'm here, Galal.
Oh, hi, Dal. How are you?
How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, thanks.
How's life in Egypt?
Yeah, hectic. I've got my examination tomorrow morning. I've been setting the thing up all day online. So I meant to contact you actually.
Well, let's
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we have a little Zoom call offline? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
I can put you in your own little room if you want. You can.
It's all right. I've been stuck in this one all day. I think I've had enough of this today.
Yeah.
Do I do that now,
My
Dal?
lights are working. Do you want to? Yeah, all right. All right. Let's go into a room.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to join us?
I was going to say, let's just kick everybody else out.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody else wants to carry on chatting, I mean, I think it's quite good because this is what we do at the beginning and the end of any conference, isn't it? So you can chat with a glass of wine beforehand and you can chat afterwards. So.
Yeah.
Try
The
not to
cold
drink.
hole, huh?
Try not to drink.
Yeah, that's what I missed.
Hello.
Mine.
Hey, sir, yeah, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. And you?
Good, yeah, good, thanks.
Looking
hi,
forward to
Sumer.
go back to normality. Are you interested? Hi, Galal, how are you?
Well, thanks.
Are you interested for another joint event?
Yeah, why not? Let's do one. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'll contact you. Then.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Mm.
Yeah. How's it going with your group?
With my group, it's okay. I'm doing most of the work now.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very quiet. I can't see them.
No.
Yeah, so it's difficult. But to be honest, this last lockdown is really, really hard.
What for you? Has
Yeah,
it?
for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I find it's affected different people in different ways. I think some people have become very busy and it hasn't affected them much. I think if you're a builder in my part of the UK, you're as busy as ever.
Like gold dust at the moment.
Yeah, can't get them. No,
Oh,
exactly.
really? Okay. Everybody's getting their extensions ready or something?
Yeah. I just ordered myself a large bookcase from a really good supplier. They're called Shelf Store, and you design it online. And they said it's 1-day delivery. I ordered it last Thursday, and on Friday I received a telephone call from a guy 5 miles away, who I just happened to know, who said, "I've just got 3 parcels dumped outside my house, and the driver's buggered off." And so I rang up Shelf Store, and the guy was just leaving his warehouse on his job in the warehouse on Friday evening. He said, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." And it turns out that they sent the whole bookcase in 2 assignments. So I finally got the second one today. But it's a great system. I think DIY, even more than building, has become. I've never put a bookshelf up before, but I decided I'd give it a go.
When the carpenter's out of work.
Yeah, looks as though you've got too many books on your bookshelf, Daljit. They're all sagging.
I had that built 20 years ago. I had that specially built 20 years ago, and it's just gone.
Maggie. Wow.
Hey, I'm reading a good book at the moment.
Building.
Secure and
Very good book.
All right. That sounds good.
serious. Yeah.
Okay.
How's your book getting on, Dal? Is it selling like
Oh,
hotcakes?
it's doing. Just say I'm selling a copy a day.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my copy, Dal. I'm not
Yeah.
sure whether to give you my London address or my Cairo
Yeah,
address.
I started December. Yeah, it went quite well. It's still going quite well.
Fantastic.
I would say the next one I won't self-publish, but this one I'm pleasantly surprised. In fact, I was really pleasantly surprised. It's done quite well.
Excellent.
Yeah. But then I did give away 200 copies. Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know what? When I see you lot, give you the mouse mat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, had it all done. Yeah, book's gone well. Yeah. Software's doing. We've been developing software since January, and we developed it for this client, and that is really. We demoed it to a third party the other day on their behalf, and that's gone really well. So hopefully, yeah. So yeah, been quite busy this year. Been quite busy.
Fantastic.
All the best.
Oh well. Just kids will be back in the summer. Anyway, Galal.
Yeah.
What's happening? You're looking good, mate.
Thank you. I've been busy as well.
Hope to see you soon in person. Bye bye for now.
Bye, Sir.
Bye, Sir.
Bye. So see you later.
Thank you very much for the seminar.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, good to see you. I think
Yeah,
I'm
off as
gonna.
well.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. So good to see you all, and look forward to the next session in. When is it actually? When is our next gig?
3 weeks.
Is that yours?
It's next month, isn't it? Hang on.
Gabby's one, yeah. We got one.
We had one in the diary for
22nd of March.
Is it
22nd of March? I've got here.
Let's run one earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Gabby's.
Well, that was pretty good considering we only marketed it on Thursday, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
I don't think these things need a long marketing window. I think they're short and sweet.
No, they don't.
You don't need long runs. I think.
No. And an hour's
it's-
about right. I think any more than that, people run out of oomph.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna stop the session. I think, unless you want to carry on, Ian.
No, I need to go and eat my dinner.
All right.
Galal.
Thank you everyone for this nice session.
Galal,